Thank you for being here today at our CAMPS event on IT fundamentals. IT is becoming a bigger and bigger part of every manufacturing person's life. And we look forward to learning from Dave Henderson, CEO of CyberStreams, and Elizabeth Harris is going to be facilitating today. Elizabeth is a board member for CAMPS. And Elizabeth is such an experienced leader. She has experience growing her own business from 4 million to 16 million, a 4x growth over 3.5 years. She's the CEO of Resultist Consulting, a marvelous human being above all things. But we have experienced her leadership, we've experienced her problem-solving capabilities, and we really appreciate her being here today to help facilitate this and get our event going today. So Elizabeth, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thanks very much, Kirk. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. As Kirk mentioned, I'm Elizabeth Harris. In addition to sitting on the board of directors for CAMPS, I'm also the chair of the events committee. And when I'm not involved with CAMPS, I work with CEOs and business owners on the alignment of their company vision and go-to-market strategies so that their most profitable clients buy their most profitable products. Today, and at our May CAMPS Roundtable, we are focusing on a variety of IT fundamentals. And while they are fundamental, they are by no means basic. Before I introduce our speaker, I have two quick housekeeping items. As you've seen when you joined, we are recording this session for your future reference. And if you have questions as we go along, would you please use the chat feature? I'll be monitoring the chat to get questions to Dave, and bear with us if we delay addressing your question, if it's an answer that Dave is about to give you in an upcoming slide. Be patient, we will get to you. So today, our speaker is a fellow CAMPS member, Dave Henderson from CyberStreams. Dave has more than 30 years of experience in IT. He has a rich set of skills from software design to executive leadership. His career includes CRM, software, and website development. Dave is a co-founder of CyberStreams, an outsourced IT company supporting small businesses and nonprofits in both the Seattle and Austin areas, and soon to be coming to additional areas. One of Dave's passion is cybersecurity, and he published a book this year called Cybersecurity Essentials, a no-nonsense guide for small and medium-sized businesses. And now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over control of the screen to Dave so he can get us started on our not basic IT fundamentals. Good morning, Dave. Welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I've got to make sure I'm on the right slide here and hitting the right button. Great. Well, thank you so much again for the introduction, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. I think you covered a lot about me. I'm also proud to be celebrating my 35th year with my wife, and we're actually getting ready to celebrate our 30th anniversary. I also a proud father of 2 adult children. My son works in the microbiology lab at Skagit Valley Hospital and is studying to get a computer science degree, where he believes he can take his biology together with computers and big data and do some wonderful things. And my daughter is finishing finals for law school tomorrow. We'll take the bar this summer and go to work for the King County Public Defense Office. So something I'm really excited about. I like to tell people in 1983, together with my friend Bruce Forstall, we wrote a computer virus. There was a gentleman in the classroom that was stealing people's files. And we figured out how to create a boot login that required a special code where the computer would delete the files on both the disks. So kind of a crafty, sneaky thing. But I've been touching computers for a long time. I'm a corporate circle sponsor of PNAA. I'm on the innovation committee of CAMPS, and I'm really proud to be an author, a speaker, and I do some coaching as well. So just a little bit more about me. Today, we're going to talk about IT budgeting. We're going to talk about some file sharing best practices. I've got backup and disaster recovery planning on the slide. It's going to say business continuity. I'm going to touch on that briefly, but it is a huge topic. Touch a little bit on networking basics. Talk a little bit about what I think people should be looking for when they're looking for support and services. Cover unified security. And then I've got a bunch of slides on security, where I think, quite frankly, I know that the bad actors are getting smarter and better and faster and more sophisticated all the time. And what a lot of folks out in the manufacturing community just don't take this seriously enough. So we'll cover a fair bit on security. So about budgeting, the Gartner Group suggests that the average IT budgets range from 3 to 7% of revenue. But frankly, I don't think it's as simple as that, right? There are so many things that we need to consider. Who are the personnel that are doing it? What hardware do we need, or do we need it? Compliance can be one of the biggest factors on this range from 3 to 7%. So I almost hate to say CMMC or NIST 800-171, because if you're in the DoD realm, you're just tired of hearing about it. But to comply with CMMC 2.0 will have 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3. A lot of manufacturers are going to have to comply with 2, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I would argue that a significant portion of that should not be in your IT budget, but that's up for debate. A lot of software can be in your IT budget, and you will notice that I have software is in the budget, and I also have software is not in the budget. I think this is something that's important for a leadership team to talk about, because virus protection software, backup software, Microsoft Office, Google, and that sort of things, I can make an argument that those should be in your IT budget, but QuickBooks, your ERP, your manufacturing programs, CAD, things like that, I don't believe those should be in your IT budget. Those should be in your departmental budgets. But you should understand that, know where you put that, and manage it in that way. Outsourcing, right? I don't know many organizations that are able to run an in-house IT organization where they can do all the work. So sitting down and thinking 5 years ahead about where you're going, updating software, that sort of thing is really important. The shadow IT is something that most organizations miss and take for granted. When I was working for a company in Alaska, the state of Alaska spent $1.5 million doing an extensive audit of their IT organization, and they ended up transferring tens of employees from departmental roles over to IT because they were spending so much time doing IT work. So we see this happen a lot in organizations where there might be a super user in a group. It might be so hard to call the help desk and to get help that people solve their own problems. And this ends up being a significant cost in the organization that you aren't accounting for. Then disaster recovery, from understanding how you're backing up your data, what your procedures are, and your insurance, right, are all important. And then of course, occupancy cost. If you're doing IT in-house, if you have servers, that sort of stuff, you have to pay rent for that space. I see quite often that people end up throwing marketing items in their IT budget, and that's a mistake, right? The people that work on your website are not IT people. They're graphic designers. So the couple $100 a month you spend to host your website, I argue that's not in your IT budget. That's a marketing budget. That's where I put it for my company. And the work on that is it's marketing. Now, I mentioned I had compliance in both sides of the budget. I see this graphic over and over again when you talk about the cybersecurity maturity model, CMMC. It's people, process, culture, and technology. Folks that get it right treat that more like AS 9100, that sort of thing, than like an IT problem. And they put that problem in the hands of a non-IT person. Of the 110 controls that are in NIST 800-171, I believe about 60% of them are focused on people, process, and culture, and 40% is on IT. So, you know, sure, you can put that in your IT budget. Sure, you can make an IT person responsible for it. The results will be all the technology stuff will get taken care of, but none of the people in process and culture will. So I touched on software marketing. I often see people put IT applications in the IT budget, that sort of stuff. I don't think it's honest, and I don't think it helps you to understand where and how to spend your money wisely. Sorry, my slide wasn't advancing. So a few of the things to consider are revenue, EBITDA, and value. I've got a complex spreadsheet that I'll work with some clients on to help them to develop a 3 to 5 year budget. And, you know, just taking a percentage of revenue may not be useful if your, you know, net ordinary income is only 3%. Whereas if you're doing 45% net, you know, you might have a whole different perspective on that. And then the overall value of your organization, I think, makes a lot of sense to consider that also, because ultimately a lot of what you do in IT is protecting your investment. And so that's something I really stress for people to focus on. And then industry risk factors. Obviously, a lot of people in the Seattle area are involved in or thinking about being involved in Department of Defense. That's a huge issue. But there are many other state, federal regulations that you may have to comply with that you know, will affect your business. And then what if you lose your business? What if you lose profit? You know, what if you lose value, right? Those are things to consider when you think about the right way to invest, because arguably a lot of what you do in IT is about ameliorating risk. This is a graphic that I borrowed from a partner I work with, that from time to time, I'll refer clients and prospects over to these folks to run them through this process. So just really quickly, they do an IT budget justification. So they dig deep down. I can share this in a PDF if people want to see it, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this kind of gives you an idea of a process that real smart companies will go through, right? IT justification project, cost analysis. How do we optimize your budget? It's not uncommon. Folks will run through this process and find out that they're duplicating spend or spending way too much on telecommunications, that sort of stuff, and they can re-level those things. And then cyber insurance and all that sort of stuff. Holy smokes, if you don't have a very specific cyber insurance policy, big mistake. Here's an area a lot of people miss, and it's inventory assessment, your software, hardware, and your contracts, understanding those, the terms of them, when they expire, when they need to be renewed, very important. We use a sophisticated software called Lifecycle Insights that we can go grab all the hardware and software into a list and share that with our clients. A lot of vendors like us will have tools like that. That'll help really identify the age of things and when they need to be renewed, to ensure that you're planning for those. Nothing worse than having your IT guy come up and say, oops, we got to spend $20,000 next month. So I'm going to move along. So file sharing best practices. You know, I think it really starts with a really well-planned file structure and understanding permissions. This is something a lot of folks struggle with, this file structure permissions and naming conventions, and a file sharing environment can become a horrible, ugly mess that's very unmanageable. I see a lot of firms that will appoint a czar or an admin, a super user, something like that, and they'll actually set up their file system. So when people create new files, that person's aware of it, and they can come in and say, you named that wrong, you put it in the wrong place, let's move it over here, that sort of thing. I also see where each department will have their own top level folder, and a person in that department will be the owner of that. If that doesn't exist and everybody can create new folders and files wherever they want, that results in chaos. Then compliance, you'll hear me talk about compliance a lot, but if you're bound by regulatory compliance, where you keep your files, how you keep your files becomes extremely important. And I have a lot of prospective clients that come to us that go, we use Dropbox. And we'll find out right away that 15 ex-employees have access to it. Dropbox is, we just don't recommend it because it's so easy to hack, that sort of stuff. So understand where your compliance is and the tools and the structure and how you use that, how you share it, who can access that. That's an important thing to consider. And then on-premise versus cloud. Now, we're a Microsoft shop. For our clients, we set up SharePoint to share the files, and we use something called OneDrive. Google has something similar, and there are other third-party tools that have a similar sort of structure. But a modern way to share files is to have a central cloud-based repository. You see those files on your computer. If they're on your computer, all the sharing and permissions are maintained through that. If an employee is dismissed, you lock their account in the directory service, and they no longer have access to the files immediately, that sort of stuff. So these new modern cloud-based file sharing is a really great way to go, except if you have gigantic files. Wish that the internet was fast enough for this sort of thing, but we see time and time again, folks have AutoCAD, Revit, SolidWorks, that sort of thing, and these applications in a cooperative environment don't lend themselves well to cloud-based file sharing. So it's not uncommon that we'll have an on-prem server. We're also seeing some folks that are really needing to comply with CMMC are going to on-site file servers because that helps them sequester that and ensure that they're protecting it really well. And we do hybrids, right, where you can have a file server on site, but it is syncing up into the cloud structure. And then retention policy. It's important to understand this, especially in a regulatory environment, but it can also be a very useful tool to ensure that you aren't keeping 7-year-old files that no one's ever touched. So business continuity. Backup, disaster recovery, blah, blah, blah. I could talk for hours on business continuity, but this is something that in a lot of ways starts with, what do you do if you have a fire, right, in your office? What door do you go to? I mean, I would argue that, keeping your business running through any eventuality is something that everybody should plan ahead on. I'm focused on data, right? And the first thing that every business should do is identify their data, every bit of it, anywhere that it is. Are you using Gusto for payroll or paychecks.com or something like that? You have data there, and it's pretty easy to set a schedule, to check, to review that once a quarter, to keep a spreadsheet and identify each piece of corporate data that you have. It's quite often that we'll work with clients that have high regulatory compliance issues where they have to report on that and they have to identify who has access to that data. And most people don't know that Microsoft doesn't back up your data. They have it protected all over the place, but they don't back it up. So you can get a third party. We provide third party to our clients to back up that data. But if you have data in different places and you don't know how it's being protected, it's a good idea to ask and understand that, right? So reaching out to your vendors and go, do you back up my data? How is it backed up? How is it restored? How long will it take? That kind of takes me into this RTO and RPO. These are two terms that we use constantly in talking about data. So recovery time objective is, if I were to have a data loss event, how long could I wait to get it back? And it's a really important question to ask on each piece of data that's critical to your business. If all my AutoCAD files were gone, I could keep my business running for 4 days before it became a disaster. If all my AutoCAD files disappeared, I can't wait 30 minutes. That'll make a big difference in your investment in how you go about protecting that data. Then you have recovery point objective. If I lose data and it becomes restored, I am okay with losing 2 days worth of data. I can restore that data. Our QuickBooks, right? I can go back and I can re-enter all of my entries and do all of that for the last 2 days of data, and that would be okay. I can live through that work, right? Or, hey, if 1 minute of my accounting data is lost, that's terrible for me. That understanding those two things, RTO, RPO, on your information, very important in understanding the scale of your investment. And as I mentioned before, it's not uncommon that cloud-based data is not protected. More and more and more, we're relying on software as a service. Ask them, where is my data? How is it protected? Can I back it up? We see a lot of folks wanting to do that, to be able to bring it down into their own backup solution so they know they have it. So testing restores. Before I started CyberStreams, I worked for a company called Government Computer Sales, and I walked from data center to data center. I bet you I've been in 200 data centers, and I used to love to ask the IT team, so tell me about your backups. And they would say, our backups work great. And then I'd say, when was the last time you did a test restore? And they'd all look at their shoes because they've never done them. The man who used to sit in a hospital was using an AS100 system, really old, big iron accounting system, and they were backing up to tapes. And the system went down. They went to restore from the tapes, and they were blank. It cost them $300,000 to bring in a crew of consultants to come in and get them back to work. And then they turned around and spent $300,000 on a new backup system to install, ensure it was backing up. So if you're backing up to a disk or a tape and taking it home and that sort of stuff, right? Or you have an IT provider that's helping you with this, they should be demonstrating to you that they are regularly testing their ability to restore your data. And compliance. I'm tired of talking about compliance, but it's always a factor, right? You know, if you're working with the Department of Defense, they're going to have rules about where that data goes, how you do it. Is the place you're sending your data compliant? That's going to be important. So networking basics. I know I spent a lot of time here, but you know, in old school networking, you got switches, routers, and wireless. We happen to specialize in Meraki. Meraki is a fantastic, just a wonderful suite of products that interact with each other and are cloud managed. You know, a small company can get away with consumer grade gear, but you know, I really encourage people to take a step up to professional gear. You know, doing it yourself is tough. But you know, there are smart switches and dumb switches. There are basic routers and complex routers, firewalls, that sort of stuff. And there are some really, there's a litany of wireless access point capabilities out there. If you can get those all from the same vendor and they all work well together and they all talk together and they're configured by an expert who really knows how to put those together, they can really help your business ensure that you're secure and the data is moving around efficiently. It's really easy to do it poorly. You hear a lot of talk about WAN versus LAN. So WAN is wide area network. That's everything that happens after it hits your firewall and your router out to the internet, right? The wide area network. All the stuff internally is your LAN. And you can have you know, two facilities connected up through a WAN connection where they all share the same LAN. Some of those kinds of things are pretty common. When I talk about on-premise versus cloud managed, there are lots and lots of networking equipment out there that all of it's in-house, all of it's configured on the machine, and it requires some pretty specialized skill to make those work. More common today is a cloud managed environment, and it means that you can manage it from where you're at, get alerts and that sort of thing. The bullet point I did put in here that is most important is, I don't care where you have a firewall. If there's a firewall, you need to make sure it's getting regular updates, and you need to make sure it's secured with a strong username and password, and preferably multi-factor authentication. And that includes the firewall that Comcast gave you. We work with clients all the time because so many people work remotely. And we will take a look at the Comcast modem, and the username will be admin and the password will be password. That is really easy to hack, and the hackers are out there searching for them through artificial intelligence and brute force attacks. So please set a password on your router. Also, there are lots of neat tricks where the bad guys can install software on your router and start copying all the data that comes in and out of your network. So you people working from home, make sure that they have a good router, it's configured properly, and it's set to auto update. If it's not set to auto update and not able to, go buy a new one, and preferably something a little better than Best Buy. VPN. Meraki has a wonderful VPN interface. It's unlimited, and it interacts perfectly with the default VPN on a Windows and an Apple machine. So it's part of why we recommend it. For those that don't know, VPN is virtual private network. And really all it means is I can log into my office network remotely through a what they call a tunnel. So it's an encrypted data feed where your data stays inside of that encrypted feed. And it's a very powerful way to work from home. I could talk some more on different ways to work from home that do not require a VPN, but there's a lot of cases out there where it's needed, not needed, and it's a bigger topic than I can cover today. So support and services. There are plenty of firms that are large enough to run their own IT department. They have their own help desk. Quite frankly, it's not uncommon for me to look at those, and they don't even have a ticketing system. You email John, and hopefully John gets back to you, that sort of stuff. I would say if you're an organization where you have in-house IT and they do not have a ticketing system, there's lots of great products out there. They're inexpensive, and they are very powerful to ensure we're capturing the issues and dealing with the issues. But a lot of software is what I call Spider-Man software. With great power comes great responsibility. So it's not enough to have the system. You need to have the policies and procedures around it to ensure that it works well for you. So whether you're doing you're running help desk in-house or outsourcing it, that's something to ask about and understand. How are you taking tickets? How are you prioritizing those tickets and doling them out? How are you managing those? It's a very important part of running a great support service. If you're outsourcing it, are they familiar with your industry? I think this is important too. I don't feel like I need to speak too much on that, but it's a good thing to ask. Do you have other clients in my industry? Do you speak our language? What are their SLAs? Service level agreement. It's good to know. If I call on the phone, like my business, I promise if you call on the phone, we'll answer the phone in 90 seconds or less, or take $100 off your bill. I called a competitor's help desk the other day and sat on hold for 20 minutes. What does that mean to me, right? What are my expectations? How soon can I expect you to assign an engineer? Those sorts of things. I like my clients to know that so that they aren't calling and angry because it took me 2 hours to solve a problem and they wanted it solved in 5 minutes, that sort of stuff. So I covered the ticketing system. Do they have a documentation system? So again, whether you're in-house or outsourcing, There should be a set of policies and procedures for how we document the environment, how we document processes, that sort of stuff. We use a product called IT Boost. A lot of my competitors use that, or IT Glue, a robust system for capturing every little detail and processes. So, you know, a lot of processes are repeatable. A lot of IT people won't get those down, and what you get is every time you call the problem, you get another freelancer solving it in a different way. So I encourage, if you've got nothing, to start with the 80-20 rule. Document 20% of what you do that affects 80% of your business. So if you're outsourcing, are they hourly, inclusive, or both? People get caught on this all the time, where they think they're getting an all-inclusive program. They find out that there's a lot of hourly. Ask about that, get a lot of details, and really understand what you're up against. I encourage people to find IT companies that offer an all-inclusive program. That means you have a predictable price month after month. Some folks think, hey, if I go hourly, I'm going to save money. What they find out is they die from 1,000 cuts. And you spend a lot of time arguing over your invoice every month. So is monitoring and maintenance included? And what are you getting under monitoring and maintenance? I see a lot of my competitors that offer patching, and what you find out is you get Windows patching, but you don't get patching for Adobe and Reddit and things like that, right? So get some details about what's included, how often they do it. Is it 24/7? Maintenance is extremely important. Proactive effort in your network is going to solve problems before they happen. And are there hidden costs? Man, I just got my hands on a competitor's proposal the other day, and I was able to find 25 hidden costs in the proposal. I see that a lot in my industry, you know, sort of bait and switch offers. So if you're out there shopping for a new IT firm, really look hard, really ask a lot of questions. So unified communication, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It's a hot topic in my industry. We solve this with a partnership with a company called Nextiva and with Microsoft Teams. Cisco has a solution. There are plenty of solutions out there. It's not uncommon for us to walk into a small business where they have an old sort of PBX style phone system. When people leave a voicemail message, it can't be transcribed to an email. So in a good unified communication system, Microsoft Teams, it starts with a directory, right? So your users get set up in Active Directory, it's called, and then you're able to give them permissions for all the other things they can do in the organization, moving files around, things like that. But if you dismiss them, you turn their account off in the directory, and they no longer have access to any of it. But again, on unified communications, I could talk for quite a while on that topic. But it's easy enough to say that it's about communicating, right? And it's about unifying that communication. And there's so much power. Again, I'm a Microsoft shop, so we do that with Teams, but incoming, outgoing phone calls, interactions in the office, you know, knowing whether you're at your desk or not, smart interactions with applications, tying all that permission into file sharing, you know, all of that works really well together and offers some real power in an organization. So, security. When you're affected by a cybercrime through no fault of your own, or will your community, vendors, employees, clients, families, peers call you stupid, irresponsible, or both? This is a quote from a friend of mine, Peter Veleza, who does a lot of speaking in the Midwest. You know, I really believe, and I know that the biggest value I bring to my clients every day is security. And I really find oftentimes small business owners, it's often the last thing they think about until they get hit with a ransomware. 2 years ago, I sat on a panel with 2 FBI agents and an FAA agent on the PNAA annual conference. And in prepping for the meeting, the FBI agents kept talking about, well, they kept talking about two things. They kept talking about the Chinese and how they want to steal everything we have. And the fact that their, I think it's J-10 jet is an exact copy of our F-22. But they talked a lot about how often they're responding to ransomware attacks in Seattle. It's weekly. It's weekly. That slide I showed earlier with the steps in budgeting is from a company called Blue Equinox. They have a network of 50 company partners and 30 more vendor partners and that sort of stuff. They're responding to a ransomware every week. And 2 weeks ago, the company that got hit with the ransomware spent north of $100,000 responding to it. So it's really serious. And what are we worried about? They're looking for our money. They cut down on our productivity. Again, compliance, right? They might affect your operations and that, you know, community thing, right? Your reputation. So why all this cybercrime? Well, these statistics are a little old, but the cybercrime industry, and it is a big business, is believed to net about $2 trillion a year. That's a lot of cash, right? But it's gotten worse in that now it's nation states looking for our intellectual property. So again, this is a couple-year-old slide, but this is a heat map of just some of the ransomwares that hit. I believe this is from 2019. So you know, the landscape is pretty big. So the number one attack vector is social engineering, and social engineering is, you know, 21st century speak for the basic con, right? The art of manipulating people. I hired a new employee 8 months ago, and it took a couple of days for me to sit down with her and go over some of the basic cybersecurity rules that we have and get her into our cybersecurity training. That was a mistake. On day 3, she got an email supposedly from me instructing her to buy gift cards with her own credit card, and I would reimburse her. The bad guys are using artificial intelligence to track LinkedIn. She went into LinkedIn and put that she had a new job. Those systems picked that up. They assigned an agent to me. The agent looked through the LinkedIn, found out that I was her boss, and then created a spear phishing email written. It looked just like it was coming from me. Fortunately, she called and asked me about it and wondered why I was asking her to do it. And that stopped there. But people are getting scammed on that every day. And it's just one example of some really smart social engineering. So I want to be respectful for time, so I'm not going to go through all of this. But there are quite a few interesting ways that we do social engineering. Tailgating is one I think is real interesting, and it happens every day all over the place. If you have a secure front door, right, and people have to come into the key card, you should be regularly coaching them and talking to them that they don't let anybody through the door. Hey, I'm just here to see John. Don't let them in. I'm sorry, it's the rules. I can't let you in. Because bad actors will sneak in with your employees. There's a lot of stories around that, but it's on the phone, it's smart. There's all kinds of interesting ways that these folks are tricking your employees, your staff, your grandmother. And truly the number one attack vector is email. I mean, I have the highest level of security that you can possibly have, and spear phishing emails still get in front of me every day. I shouldn't say every day, but throughout the week. One thing I'll say is we use a specialized platform called Breach Secure Now, and for ourselves and our clients, we send regular mock spear phishing, and when our employees catch them, they get points on their system, and we highly gamify that in our environment. So we're regularly sharing who's catching the most, doing it the best, bragging, competing for the top cycle. And then for those people that click on those, we get an announcement that it happened. They get a frowny face, and we follow up with, talk with them. How is it you fell for this? What did you learn from this? And I always do what I call SLAM: sender, link, attachment, message. If you Google the SLAM method, you'll find a dozen examples of that. I encourage everybody to just do that really quick. And if you don't have any other program, at least walk around, talk to your employees, and share with them the SLAM method, right? Check the sender, check the links, check the attachments, check the message. Again, if you Google that, you'll find a few rules to follow in SLAM, and it's a great, memorable way to think about how to be skeptical of incoming emails. I've touched on phishing several times. Phishing is emails sent to you meant to trick you into giving up your information or your credentials. Spear phishing is phishing using very particular information about you and your organization. It is very, very sophisticated, and there are thousands and thousands of agents. And I virtually guarantee you there's at least one agent out there assigned to your business. They're assigned to get to know you, who you are, your revenue, that sort of thing. If you're a 40 million a year in business, revenue business, to send something over to ask you to transfer $1 million might be a normal transaction. But if you're doing $1 million in revenue, it wouldn't. So spear phishing will take those sorts of things into account and tailor that message to trick your people into doing wrong things based on that research. I had a couple of examples of emails. I'm looking at the clock and knowing I need to move a little bit quicker here, but there's a lot of that going on. I like to say that we're in ransomware 2.0. Ransomware 1.0 is they would encrypt your files and extort you for Bitcoin or gift cards for the key. Today, what they do is they come and they skulk around your organization for days, weeks, or months. They identify your file structures, what's important, where there's at. They download the important stuff so that they have it, and then they encrypt your data. Sometimes they bring in a partner company that encrypts your data again, and then they extort you for not only do we want the key, we want money for the key, but if you don't give it up, we'll embarrass you or force you out of compliance, right? So, they particularly have healthcare organizations because if they give up patient data, they violate HIPAA, things like that. It's very insidious, and it's big business. It's mafias, it's crime organizations, and it's nation states, North Korea, China. So the dark web, I'll just touch on this really quick. This is a place that you have to get there with intention, and it's criminal, and people show up on the dark web. They're using the passwords. It's a good idea to have dark web monitoring, know when you've been hacked, and react to it. So a few helpful tips. Be mindful. Educate yourself, your staff. Don't click on things unless you're very certain. Be skeptical. When I mentioned the SLAM method, if you're not doing anything else in your organization, at least once a quarter, sit down with everybody and talk about how important protecting your data and your intellectual property, how important that is, and at least talk about the SLAM method with folks and encourage them to be using that. Much better would be to subscribe to something like Breach Secure Now, or the name suddenly escaping me, KnowBe4 is a software as a service that companies can sign up for without an IT department. I have a friend who's a high-level IT person at Parametrics, a 750-person company based here in the Seattle area. They use KnowBe4, and it's been very successful at lowering their attack vector because KnowBe4 does mock phishing and do mock phone calls. It does the cybersecurity awareness training, all of those things. So be educated, be skeptical. At least have antivirus software on your systems. That same friend I was talking about will tell you that antivirus software is about 30% effective. And if you use 3 different antivirus softwares collectively, they might be 60% effective. But you need it, right? It needs to be there. It shouldn't be each individual downloads it and sets it up. Buy it as a company, install it as a company, and ensure somebody is managing it on a regular basis, checking it, and it's getting updated. Because if your virus protection data file is a month old, then there are new attack vectors that you're missing in it. So better still, though, is a layered approach, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Then back up your data, right? We touched on this a lot before, right? But you know, at a minimum, if you've got a file server, you need some kind of simple software that gets that data off to another drive, and you're getting that drive off site. Better still is to subscribe to a modern cloud-based system. There are quite a few out there. IT companies like myself will always have something, Data, StorageCraft, Axient. There's some really great programs out there that can either move your data out to a secure data center or bring your data to an in-house appliance and then bring it out to the cloud to ensure it's very well protected. With the system we use, and it's very common, it actually backs up your servers and your data to the appliance. And if something happened with your server, you can actually spin up your server as a virtual machine on that unit. So a lot of really great solutions out there, depending on what you need. And as I said before, Microsoft does not back up your data. So if you're in Microsoft 365 or the Google Workspace, they don't back up your data. They're protecting it in multiple places, not backing it up. So there are third-party tools. If your data is important to you, all right, and you want to be able to restore, you need to be backing it up yourself. Then strong passwords. My industry more and more recommends a password manager. These are really good. We're using something called Password Boss. It's something that's aggregable for a company like me. LastPass is a good solution, although they have been hacked. But the actual data was not hackable because LastPass encrypts all of your passwords and everything, so even they can't get to it. So when you use LastPass correctly, right, you have a really strong username and password to access LastPass. Then you allow LastPass to create very strong passwords that you don't even need to know. And when you log into sites and software and things like that, it remembers those for you. If you're not going to do that, I suggest a password algorithm. And I suggest including letters or count of letters that are in the domain name that you're visiting. And with that algorithm, you'll be able to remember every password because you know the algorithm. If anybody want to know more about that, you're welcome to reach out to me. But LastPass, something like that's a great idea. Just some more on a strong password, right? Don't write it down. There's varying schools of thought on changing your password. I have the same password on my computer I've had for 5 years. I'm talk a little bit more about why I had that, why I allow that to happen. There's a lot today talking about password phrases. You might have noticed on the previous screen, it's my dog spot is, that kind of thing, right? So it's easy enough to Google, you know, how do I create a great password? But if your password is password 1, or it's your kid's name with a 1 after it, or anything like that, change that. And if you're using the same password on more than one site, this is what how the dark web comes into it, is they go and they hack your Facebook account, they get your username and password there, then they use computers and AI to try that username and password pair in other places. And that's how they get to people's bank accounts and things quite often. So please don't use the same password over and over again. Something we do as a service for free is a dark web scan. And so people ask us to do a dark web scan. We'll come back and see that it's often the owner of the company will have some weird, simple password, and they've used it on 6 websites, and it's all sitting in the dark web, ready for a bad guy to buy it. So MFA, sometimes called two-factor authentication. And I bet you everybody listening to this call has had to use it, probably to log into Bank of America or something like this. But the idea is a password is something you know, multi-factor authentication is something you have. And when we sign new clients, we let them know that multi-factor authentication is a requirement of being a client. And we'll get a lot of pushback. Oh, I don't want to mess around with that stuff. Or I'm the owner. Can you not? Well, I don't want you as a client if you don't want to use it, because you not having MFA is a big risk to my business. I encourage everybody, wherever you can turn on MFA, do it. Facebook, LinkedIn, banking, I don't care. A lot of times it's an option, turn it on. There are instances where people have been able to hack MFA, but they have to be able to hack into your cell phone and create a copy of your SIM card. It's very, very challenging. For highly regulated environments, you're seeing using an application. So I have something called Authy on my cell phone. And in order to log into my accounting package, I can't do it via text message. I have to go to Authy. And then turning out to be really popular in manufacturing is YubiKeys. So I have a YubiKey on my key ring, and I have the option of using YubiKey to sign into my account. If you're highly regulated and you're DoD, right, it's really easy to go into the Microsoft Active Directory structure and set it up to where the YubiKey is the only way that you can log in, and a code and a thumbprint is kept on the YubiKey. You plug it into the USB port, that becomes your multi-factor authentication. So there are lots of good solutions out there. Start with at least doing the text a code and turn it on wherever you can. So securing devices, you know, there's settings in Windows to make sure they're secure. I mentioned how we run into people all the time where we look at their home firewall and its admin password, that sort of stuff. Identify those devices that the hackers can get at, and that includes your cell phone, right? Today, I have Microsoft Office on my cell phone. Every time I access my email, I have to hit my thumbprint because it's that important, right? So we've turned this function on where every time I use it, I have to authenticate it with my code. That means I can't, if I set my cell phone down on a table, somebody can't pick it up and access my email. So be aware of what you have out there, what access control is. If you're working with a firm like us and on Microsoft 365, we'll make sure your hard drive is encrypted. That way, if somebody steals your laptop, they can't get access to that data. And then we make sure that everything you do is securitized through that one account. So if a laptop is lost, we hit one switch and everything is locked. If you're a small shop and you're working on your own, at least be mindful of it and think about your firewalls, your switching, that sort of stuff in your computers. Ensure that they're securitized and turn on the MFA. So I mentioned defense in depth. And this is my last slide, by the way, but these are some examples of what we're doing for defense in depth. I believe defense in depth is a term that comes from Napoleonic era war, where if you divide up your forces, you know, in the old days, you go out to a field, each army would line up in a row and they'd run into each other and start fighting. Well, they learned if they broke up into segments and kind of divide and conquer, you can weaken aspects of your enemy and you know, beat a larger force. And that's the sort of strategy we take in securitizing IT. So we do network threat detection and prevention, endpoint advanced threat protection. So it's more than just virus software. It's a much more sophisticated way of getting onto cell phones, tablets, computers, and really looking for threats and solving those before they happen. Cloud advanced threat protection. So we've got software and systems and monitoring that going in there and watching what your staff are doing out on the internet, what your cloud properties you're doing. I can't log into Amazon for Business with username and password, I have to go through my Microsoft username and password. That logs me into Amazon for Business. If I was ever fired, don't know that would happen since I own the company, but they turn the switch off on my account, I would no longer be able to access Amazon for Business and about 12 other softwares that we use in the company. Email message security and hygiene. So we've got systems running on top of the email, trying to grab and destroy threats before they happen. Identity and access management. So I was talking about, setting one login that's highly secure, right? Patch management, I mentioned that earlier. Microsoft will update Microsoft, but it won't update Adobe and it won't update all the other software. So knowing what all those softwares are and patching them, that's where a lot of the bad actors are getting in through third-party stuff. We talked about backup, endpoint and email encryption. So are you able to send, securitized information, encrypted email? And are your hard drives encrypted? That's really important. Data destruction, right? Retention policy, and end user education. So, gosh, thanks everybody. Is there any questions?
That's just excellent, Dave. Thank you very much. I actually do have a couple of questions, and if anybody in the audience has questions, be sure and share them. You mentioned having multiple antivirus software running, different layers of things. So Windows these days comes with Windows Defender.
Yep.
Is that enough?
Yes.
Oh.
The simple answer is yes.
Okay, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. We actually, in the clients that we support, we leave Windows Defender running, and then we also install WebRoot. WebRoot is a very powerful endpoint threat detection and amelioration software that integrates with other aspects of our human-based, so there's identifying a threat and then there's responding to the threat. But for a lot of organizations, as I said, any antivirus software is only doing about 30% of the job, and Windows Defender it's fine software if it's on and it's on and it's running on all your machines.
Yeah. Okay.
It shouldn't be set it and forget it. It should be managed. Right.
Well, I think that's the key to this, as everything changes moment by moment every day. Right. All of these systems need to be managed. Mm-hmm. So is there one thing, the most important thing that you think our audience should know or should act on right away?
The number one threat vector is email and social engineering, the spear phishing. Mm-hmm. Be skeptical, educate, MFA.
Even if it is a hassle.
It is a hassle. But do you put your seatbelt on when you get on your car?
Yes.
Do you buy a car with airbags and crumple zones?
Yes.
Sure, right?
There you go.
Would you have a daily driver that doesn't have those things?
No.
Yeah. Do you have insurance? Right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Cost of doing business these days in our tech world.
Risk is an important thing to evaluate in your organization for many reasons and from top to bottom.
We have one other question about file sharing recommendations.
Okay.
Are there platforms that you would recommend? Dropbox is a very commonly used application. Are there alternatives? Is that adequate?
I find that most people are using Microsoft Office 365. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft Office 365 comes with something called OneDrive. And we roll that out for all of our clients. And it provides everything that you can do with Dropbox, only it's securitized through the Active Directory structure. It's very powerful. and it is enterprise grade. Dropbox is fraught with issues, and when we get clients that are in love with it, sometimes it's hard to tear it away from them. Often convince them, because they use it to share files with clients, and clients are used to it, go, okay, well, you do marketing things and share with vendors in Dropbox, but let's get everything into the Office 365 file sharing structure. If you're on Google, Google has a similar solution as well. But
Okay.
I sell, support, deliver, and I'm passionate about the tools and what Microsoft has, and they do a good job with it. It's the collaboration in there is really fantastic too, right? So when you're using OneDrive, I can create a Microsoft file, share it with a coworker. We can log into it at the same time and work on it together.
Mm-hmm.
Once you discover that, the ability to collaborate that way is really powerful. But Dropbox loses files. It's easy to hack. Their data is out in weird places. It just isn't up to an enterprise environment. And if you're ever going to touch CMMC, that's the first thing you got to get rid of.
Good to know. Good to know. We have one other question, and we're actually over time, so we're going to make this the last one.
Great.
In terms of best bang for the buck, what simple things can a company do right now to enhance their security? And after they implement it, what is step number 2?
Yeah. So it's the same answer. MFA and cybersecurity training. Now, there's free training out there. If you're wanting to do it yourself, if you're not wanting to outsource it, go take a look at KnowBe4. It's knowbe4.com. It's a great solution. It doesn't take a lot of time to have people do a little annual training, some micro trainings, and to set up that mock phishing and actually attack them. At least Google SLAM, because I guarantee if you Google the SLAM method, you'll get several great articles on what it means. And it's funny. I often go, hey, if you're a 5-person company, bring in somebody's 15-year-old kid and tell them to research SLAM and to talk about how to be smart about it. But yeah, MFA and cybersecurity awareness training will be the top thing that you can do to avoid that social engineering that is the #1 way that ransomware hits your business.
Excellent. Dave, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us today. We really appreciate it. You've had some excellent insights for us. And I'm glad to know that Windows Defender is enough. So thank you.
Hey, if anybody would like a copy of my book, you can visit CyberStreams/Dave's book, cyberstreams.com/Dave's book, and order a copy, and we'll send you out a copy.
Dave's book. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth, Stacy, everybody, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It was a lot of fun. I hope this information was helpful for everybody.